Part 1. The desperate signal, the silence in the Galactic Council chamber, was deafening. Representatives from dozens of worlds sat frozen as the emergency beacon's message echoed through the vast hall. The desperation in Keeper Voss's voice cut through every translator, every communication device, reaching directly into the hearts of those who heard it. This is Keeper Voss of the Zilani Republic. Our homeworld Zalara is under assault by the Korthok Empire. They have already glassed 3 of our colony worlds. We estimate 72 hours before planetary bombardment begins. Please, anyone who receives this static, then nothing. Council Representative Thyra of the Alterian Federation was the first to break the silence. Her blue-scaled hands trembled as she stood, her voice carrying the weight of impending doom. The Korthok have crossed every line. They've violated the Galactic Peace Accords. We cannot let this stand. But Representative Grix of the Centauri Alliance shook his massive head, his 4 eyes reflecting the hopelessness they all felt. With what fleet, Thyra? Our ships are scattered across 4 sectors. The Rimworld pirates have been hitting supply lines for months. Our nearest battle group is 2 weeks away at minimum jump speed. The chamber erupted into chaos. In a dozen different languages, translators working overtime to keep up with the panic. Some representatives demanded immediate action. Others spoke of the political ramifications. A few whispered about the Korthok's reputation for leaving no survivors. Hours crawled by like dying stars. Now the Zilani sent 3 more transmissions, each one more desperate than the last. Their orbital defenses were failing. Their evacuation. Ships were being hunted down like prey. Children were crying in the background of the final message. Representative Mora of the Peaceful Traders Union stood with tears streaming down her face. We are supposed to be the guardians of peace in this galaxy. What good are we if we can't save one species from extinction? That's when Thyra made the decision that would change everything. Her fingers moved across the emergency protocol console, activating the distress beacon to every council member world, including the newest member, the one most representatives still whispered about in hushed tones. Earth. The humans had joined the Galactic Council only 5 years ago. Most aliens still saw them as primitive Deathworlders who had somehow managed to build spaceships. Their planet was a nightmare of extremes, whether deadly predators and natural disasters that would kill most galactic species within hours. How they had survived, let alone thrived, was a mystery that made many aliens uncomfortable. But they were council members now. The emergency protocols were clear. The response came back in less than 10 minutes. No flowery diplomatic language. No requests for additional information. No political maneuvering. Just 8 words that made every alien in the chamber feel a chill run down their spine. Message received. Fleet deploying. Maintain position. Representative Cal of the Warrior. Clans laughed nervously. What fleet? The humans have maybe 20 ships. Exploration vessels at best. What can they possibly do against the Korthok Empire? But Thyra wasn't laughing. Something in the simplicity of that message, the cold certainty of it, made her remember. The stories about Earth's history. Stories about what humans did to each other on their own world. Stories about creatures that turned warfare into an art form. Maybe, she whispered, we're about to find out what Deathworlders really are. The Korthok Empire had been terrorizing the Outer Rim for decades. Their ships were massive, their weapons devastating, their tactics brutal but effective. They would arrive at a peaceful world, demand surrender, and when it was refused, they would demonstrate their power by destroying a city, then another, until the survivors begged for mercy, but mercy wasn't in the Korthak vocabulary. They took what they wanted and left nothing but ash and radiation behind. The Zelani had never hurt anyone, or traitors, artists, philosophers. Their greatest achievement was a form of poetry that could make beings from 100 different worlds weep with its beauty. They had no military, no weapons of war, no concept of the kind of violence that was about to consume them. As the council chamber slowly emptied, representatives returning to their worlds to explain their failure. To their people, Thyra remained. She stared at the communication console, at those 8 simple words from Earth. Something was coming, something that would make the galaxy remember why evolution had forged humanity in the fires of a world that tried to kill them every single day. In the depths of space, beyond the reach of normal sensors, hidden bases throughout the Sol system began to stir. Doors that had been sealed for years cracked open. Ships that had never appeared on any official registry powered up their engines. The hunt was about to begin. Admiral Kong Deho had been waiting for this moment his entire career. Standing on the bridge of the UES Retribution, he watched through the massive viewports as humanity's greatest secret finally revealed itself to the universe. What the aliens saw would haunt their dreams for generations to come, hidden throughout the Sol system. Camouflaged bases that had been invisible to alien sensors suddenly came alive. Behind the dark side of the moon, massive hangar doors slid open with mechanical precision. From the asteroid belt, what looked like ordinary rocks split apart to reveal sleek warships nestled inside. Even Earth's own ocean floors erupted as underwater facilities launched their deadly cargo toward the stars. "Sir, the fleet is assembled," Captain Park Jimin reported from the tactical station, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what they were witnessing. 237 vessels ready for immediate deployment. Deho nodded grimly, his weathered face reflecting years of preparation for this exact scenario. The alien observers aboard the Retribution pressed their faces against the observation windows.
Ow.
Their various species' expressions of shock remarkably similar, despite their different biologies. What they saw defied everything they thought they knew about human technology. While alien civilizations built their warships like flying cities, bulky vessels, designed to intimidate through sheer-sized human ships, were something else entirely. They moved through space like living predators, their hulls painted in deep blacks and grays that seemed to swallow light itself. The smallest human destroyer was barely a fifth the size of an alien cruiser, but it moved with a deadly grace that made veteran warriors step back from the windows. Each ship's design spoke of one thing: efficient killing. No unnecessary decorations, no proud banners or ceremonial weapons. Just pure, focused lethality, wrapped in advanced armor and bristling with weapons that most aliens had never seen before. "Commander Lee Yuna, status on the strike fighters?" Deho asked. Turning to his fighter wing commander, Commander Yuna's fingers danced across her control panel, coordinating with squadron leaders throughout the fleet. 15,000 unmanned fighters ready for deployment, sir, each wing equipped with adaptive AI and kinetic penetrators. Alien observers gasped audibly. 15,000 fighters was more than most galactic fleets possessed in total. But these weren't ordinary fighters. They were unmanned death machines. Each one controlled by artificial intelligence that could make split-second decisions no organic pilot could match. Ambassador Beltar of the Galactic Council stepped forward, his 6 legs trembling. "Admiral, surely you don't need such overwhelming force for a rescue mission." Deho's eyes remained fixed on the fleet forming up outside. "Ambassador, you've never seen what the Korthok do to their victims. We have. Every human colony ship carries black box recordings from species the Korthok have exterminated. We've studied their methods. We've learned from them. The truth was more disturbing than any alien could imagine. Humanity had spent the last 5 years since first contact preparing for exactly this scenario. While the Galactic Council talked about peace and diplomacy, humans had been quietly building the most advanced military force the galaxy had ever seen. Every human ship was equipped with technology that pushed the boundaries of physics. Their engines could accelerate faster than any alien drive system. Their weapons could punch through armor that alien fleets considered impenetrable. Their sensors could track targets across impossible distances. But the most terrifying aspect wasn't the technology, it was the mindset behind it. These ships had been designed by a species that had spent millions of years learning how to kill efficiently. Every weapon system, every tactical protocol, every strategic doctrine had been tested in the crucible of human warfare. "Sir," Lieutenant Kim Tae-ho called out from the communications station, his young face troubled. "We're receiving multiple protests from the Galactic Council. They're claiming our fleet composition violates 17 different military accords." Tae-ho's expression hardened like stone. Around the bridge, his officers straightened in their chairs. The ambient lighting seemed to dim as the Admiral's voice took on a tone that made every alien present take an involuntary step backward. "Tell them we never signed those accords, Lieutenant. And remind them that while they've been debating treaty violations for 3 days, an entire species has been dying." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "They have a problem with our methods. They're welcome to handle the Korthok themselves." The silence that followed was deafening. Every alien on the bridge understood the implication. The Galactic Council had failed the Zilani. They had proven themselves incapable of decisive action when it mattered most. Now, they would watch as the species they considered primitive Deathworlders showed them what real power looked like, Captain. Park Jimin's voice cut through the tension. "Sir, all ships report ready for hyperspace jump. Navigation computers are locked onto the Zilani system." Tae-ho took one last look at the assembled fleet through the viewport. Each ship represented humanity's promise to never again be helpless in the face of genocide. They were weapons forged from the lessons of Earth's bloodiest wars. Guided by the tactical genius of a species that had turned conflict into an art form, the fleet began to move, forming into attack formations that flowed like schools of mechanical sharks. The precision wasn't human because it was. Every movement had been calculated by quantum computers that could process millions of tactical scenarios per second. "All ships," Tae-ho announced over the fleet-wide communication channel, "execute hyperspace jump. Time to show the galaxy what Deathworlders do to bullies." The space around Earth suddenly erupted in brilliant flashes of light as 237 human warships vanished into hyperspace simultaneously. The coordinated jump was executed with such precision that the energy displacement created artificial aurora in Earth's atmosphere. The Sol system felt eerily quiet, as if holding its breath. In the distance, communication arrays picked up frantic chatter from alien ships throughout the sector. Word was already spreading through the galactic networks. The humans were coming. And nothing would ever be the same. Admiral Vextar of the Korthak Empire stood 8 feet tall, his armored exoskeleton gleaming under the bridge lights of his flagship, the Bone Crusher. Round him, his officers moved with the confident swagger of predators who had never met their match. For 3 days, they had been systematically destroying everything the peaceful Zilani had built over centuries. Another orbital station eliminated, Admiral reported his weapons officer, mandibles clicking with satisfaction. The Zilani defense grid is at 12% capacity. Vextar's 4 red eyes glowed with pleasure as he watched another space station explode on the main screen. The Zilani had tried to evacuate their civilians, but Korthok hunter-killers had tracked down most of the refugee ships. Only a few thousand survivors remained on the planet's surface, huddled in underground shelters that wouldn't protect them much longer. Excellent. Begin charging the planetary bombardment cannons. I want this finished before the sensor officers panicked. Chittering interrupted him. Admiral, hyperspace signatures detected. 24 vessels approaching fast. Vextar's laugh was like grinding metal. 24 ships? These pathetic council species send children to fight the Korthok Empire? He turned to his tactical officer. Prepare to. His words died in his throat as space itself seemed to tear open. But instead of 24 ships, a massive fleet materialized before them. 237 human vessels dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, their dark hulls seeming to absorb the light from nearby stars. The Korthok bridge fell silent except for the panicked clicking of claws on control panels. Vexstar had never seen ships like these before. They moved wrong. Where alien fleets formed stately battle lines like ancient naval formations, these human ships scattered immediately into complex patterns that hurt to look at. "What are they doing?" whispered his tactical officer. Commander Park Soo-jin sat in the cockpit of her fighter, the UES Vengeance, watching the Korthok fleet through her helmet display. Around her, 15,000 unmanned fighters swarmed like angry wasps, their AI pilots already calculating attack vectors that would have been impossible for organic minds to process. "All wings execute pattern Omega," she commanded, her voice calm despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Show them how Deathworlders hunt." What happened next would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for centuries to come. The human fighters didn't charge the Korthok ships in brave, suicidal attacks like alien pilots would have. Instead, they moved like a coordinated organism, each fighter knowing exactly where every other fighter would be at any given moment. But their target wasn't the enemy fleet. It was the asteroid belt surrounding the Zalani system, using tractor beams and precisely controlled engine burns. The human fighters began herding space rocks toward the Korthok formation. Not small asteroids, massive chunks of iron and rock, the size of city blocks. The fighters worked in perfect synchronization, accelerating these natural weapons to incredible speeds. Admiral Vexstar watched in growing horror as his sensors detected hundreds of asteroids suddenly changing course, all heading directly for his fleet. Evasive maneuvers. All ships scatter. But the Korthok ships were built for intimidation, not agility. Their massive dreadnoughts could barely turn fast enough to avoid the incoming barrage. The first asteroid struck the cruiser Blooddrinker. Amidships, the impact releasing energy equivalent to a nuclear weapon. The ship simply ceased to exist, vaporized in a flash of superheated metal and expanding gas. "Sir?" Lieutenant Choi Minho called out from the tactical station aboard the UES Retribution. "Korthok flagship is attempting to retreat behind the gas giant Zalera Prime." Admiral Dehos studied the tactical display, his experienced eyes immediately seeing what the Korthok commander was trying to do: hide behind the planet's massive gravity well and use it as a shield while reorganizing his remaining forces. It was actually a smart tactical move. Too bad the humans had anticipated it. "Negative," Deho replied, his voice carrying the authority of a man who had spent decades studying every possible combat scenario. "Commander Yoon Hejin, take Squadron 7 and cut off their escape route. Use the gravity wells to your advantage." Commander Yoon's ships were already moving before the order finished transmitting. The human vessels flowed through space like liquid mercury, using the system's gravitational fields not as obstacles, but as slingshots. They accelerated around moons and planets, building up incredible velocity before emerging on precise intercept courses. The Korthok had never seen anything like it. Human ships danced through gravity fields that would have torn alien vessels apart, their pilots and AI systems working in perfect harmony to execute maneuvers that seemed to violate the laws of physics. What made it even more terrifying was the complete silence from the human fleet. No battle cries, no dramatic speeches, no demands for surrender. They simply appeared, calculated the most efficient way to destroy their enemies, and began executing their plan with mechanical precision. Korthok had built their reputation on fear. They would arrive at a peaceful world, make horrifying threats, and watch their enemies collapse in terror. But humans didn't seem to feel fear the way other species did. They felt something else, something cold and calculating that turned warfare into a science. A Korthok destroyer tried to ram one of the smaller human frigates, a desperate tactic that had worked against other species. The human ship simply wasn't there when the destroyer arrived. It had already calculated the Korthok's trajectory and moved to a position where it could rake the enemy vessel with concentrated fire from 3 different angles simultaneously. The space around Zalara became a deadly ballet of destruction. Human ships used everything in the system as weapons asteroids. Debris from destroyed stations, even chunks of ice from the outer planets. They fought not with honor or glory, but with the ruthless efficiency of apex predators who had spent millions of years learning how to kill. Within 4 hours, half the Korthok fleet was either destroyed or drifting helplessly with their engines. Dead. The survivors huddled together in a defensive formation, their previously unshakable confidence shattered like glass. Admiral Vexstar stared at his tactical display in disbelief. His mighty fleet, which had terrorized dozens of worlds, was being systematically dismantled by an enemy that fought like nothing he had ever encountered. For the first time in his long military career, the Korthak admiral felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. Not of death, but of the realization that his species had awakened something far more dangerous than they could have imagined. The humans were just getting started. Admiral Vexstar's flagship, the Bone Crusher, drifted through space like a wounded beast. Plasma leaked from ruptured hull sections, creating an eerie green glow around the massive vessel. The ship's once-proud armor was scarred and blackened, telling the story of humanity's relentless assault. Sparks flew from damaged control panels, as his remaining crew worked desperately to keep basic systems online around the crippled flagship. The survivors of what had been the Korthok Empire's most feared battle fleet tried to regroup. Of the original 68 vessels that had arrived to exterminate the Zelani, only 19 remained combat-capable. The rest were either drifting hulks or expanding clouds of debris. Status report, Vexstar demanded, his voice hoarse from breathing the acrid smoke that filled the bridge. His tactical officer's claws clicked nervously on his console. 17 ships still responding to commands, Admiral. Cruiser Death's Edge has lost all propulsion. The destroyer Skullrender is venting atmosphere from 3 decks. Vexstar's 4 red eyes burned with rage and something he had never felt. Before genuine fear, the humans had fought like nothing in his experience. No honor, no mercy, no following the accepted rules of galactic warfare. They had turned the entire star system into a weapon against his fleet. Form defensive positions. Around the gas giant, he ordered, "We need time to calculate hyperspace coordinates, an Admiral," his communications officer interrupted, mandibles chattering with panic. Incoming transmission from the human fleet. The main screen flickered to life, revealing a face that would haunt Vexstar's nightmares for the rest of his very short life. Admiral Kang Deho appeared calm, almost relaxed, but his eyes held the cold certainty of an executioner. Scars crisscrossed his weathered face, souvenirs from humanity's violent history. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. Korthok vessels, this is Admiral Kang Deho of the Terran Defense Fleet. You came to this system to commit genocide against a peaceful species. Surrender immediately and prepare to face trial for crimes against sentient life, or we invoke the right of honorable retreat. Vexstar interrupted, desperation making his voice crack. By galactic law, specifically Article 12 of the Warfare Conduct Accords, you must allow us to withdraw from this engagement. For a moment, Deho's expression didn't change. Then something shifted behind those winter-cold eyes, something that made every Korthok on the bridge instinctively step backward from their stations. "We didn't come here to follow your laws," Deho replied, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "We came here to end you."
What?
The transmission cut to black. The silence that followed was deafening. Every Korthok warrior had heard stories about species that didn't follow galactic military conventions, but they had always dismissed them as myths. Civilized beings followed rules, even in war. There were standards, protocols, ways that interstellar conflicts were supposed to be conducted, but humans weren't civilized in the way other species understood the word. They were apex predators wrapped in the illusion of diplomacy, and they had just dropped the mask. For all ships, emergency hyperspace. "Calculations," Vexter roared. "We're leaving this cursed system now?" Captain Kim Soo-young stood on the bridge of the destroyer-used Predator, watching her targeting systems paint glowing red triangles around every fleeing Korthok vessel. Her ship was one of humanity's newest designs, built specifically for pursuit and interdiction operations. While alien ships relied on brute force, human vessels were surgical instruments of destruction. "Ma'am, Korthok ships are powering up their hyperspace drives," reported her tactical officer. "They'll be able to jump in approximately 4 minutes." Kim's smile was sharp as a blade. "Sir, they're attempting to jump to hyperspace." Admiral Daho's voice crackled over the communications channel with deadly calm. "Negative." "Lieutenant Colonel Shin Dong-wook, deploy interdiction fields. Nothing leaves this system alive." Throughout the human fleet, specialized ships began activating technology that most alien species didn't even know existed. Interdiction fields, massive energy barriers that prevented hyperspace jumps within their area of effect. The technology was based on principles that human scientists had discovered while studying the warped space-time around black holes. Lieutenant Colonel Shin's task force moved with predatory grace, their ships spreading out in a perfect spherical formation around the fleeing Korthok vessels. Energy projectors hummed to life, creating invisible walls in space that turned the entire star system into a prison. The first Korthok ship to attempt a hyperspace jump was the destroyer Bloodfang. Its engines charged, reality began to bend around its hull, and then nothing. The ship simply hung in space, its hyperspace drive cycling uselessly against the interdiction field. Hyperspace jump failed. The Bloodfang's captain transmitted in panic. Unknown energy interference? We're trapped. What happened next would be remembered as one of the most methodical displays of military precision in galactic history. The human fleet didn't charge forward in a final glorious battle. Instead, they began systematically hunting down each Korthok vessel with the patience of wolves stalking wounded prey. Captain Park Min-soo, commanding the heavy cruiser U.S. Nemesis, coordinated his squadron's approach on the Korthok battleship Iron Fist. "Target their engines first. I want them helpless, not dead, yet." The human weapons were different from anything the Korthok had encountered. Instead of massive energy cannons designed to overwhelm shields through brute force, human ships used precisely targeted kinetic rounds and focused energy beams that found weak points in enemy armor. Every shot was calculated for maximum effect with minimum waste. The Iron Fist's massive engines exploded in sequence, leaving the battleship drifting helplessly. Its captain tried to ram the nearest human vessel in a desperate final attack, but the human ship simply wasn't there when the Korthok arrived. It had already moved to the optimal firing position and began systematically stripping away the battleship's weapons. One by one, the Korthok ships fell silent. Not in glorious explosions, but in the quiet desperation of predators who had finally met something higher on the food chain. The humans gave no quarter, showed no mercy, accepted no surrender. They had seen the recordings from the Zilani refugee ships, had heard the final transmissions from the orbital stations. The Korthok had come to this system to commit genocide. The humans had come to ensure they never committed genocide again. Admiral Vexstar made one final transmission as his flagship's life support began to fail. "You're monsters," he gasped. "It's worse than anything in the galaxy. The Council will hear of this. They'll stop you." But there was no response from the human fleet. They had already moved on to their next target, methodically erasing every trace of Korthok presence from the Zilani system. When they were finished, the only evidence of the invasion would be the debris fields drifting silently through space, a warning to anyone else who might consider preying on the innocent. The age of human protection had begun, and it would be written in the ashes of those who dared threaten the defenseless. 3 days after the last Korthok ship had been reduced to drifting scrap metal, Admiral Daho walked through the rebuilt Zilani Planetary Command Center. The facility had been hastily reconstructed using human engineering techniques, its walls still bearing the scorch marks from Korthok bombardment. Emergency lighting cast long shadows across the busy interior, where human technicians worked alongside grateful Zilani survivors to restore basic planetary communications. The Zilani moved around the human officers with a mixture of awe and barely concealed terror. These graceful, blue-skinned beings had spent centuries perfecting their art, their poetry, their philosophy of peaceful coexistence. Now they watched as the species that had saved them demonstrated a casual competence with violence that left them speechless. Keeper Voss approached Admiral Daho with hesitant steps, his forearms trembling slightly. The elderly Zelani had aged decades in the past week. His normally pristine robes now torn and stained with the dust of his dying world. Admiral, the reports we're receiving, ... They seem impossible. The Korthok Empire is truly ... finished? Deho nodded grimly, his weathered face showing no satisfaction in the victory. Their military capacity has been completely eliminated, Keeper. Every warship, every orbital platform, every military installation across 17 star systems has been neutralized. Captain Park Jimin stepped forward, tablet in hand. The civilian populations are being relocated to supervised worlds under Galactic Council oversight. They'll be monitored to ensure they never again pose a threat to peaceful species. The scope of what the humans had accomplished was staggering. In 72 hours, they had systematically dismantled an empire that had terrorized the galaxy. For decades, not just the fleet that had attacked Zalera, but the entire Korthok military machine across dozens of worlds. Their ships had moved through space like a plague of mechanical locusts, leaving nothing but empty bases and surrendered populations in their wake. Commander Li Yuna approached with her communication tablet. Her expression troubled. Sir, we're receiving priority transmissions from 17 different alien governments. They're all requesting immediate defensive pacts with Earth. Deho studied the list of names on the screen. Recognizing several species that had previously dismissed humanity as primitive newcomers to galactic civilization, the Altarian Federation, the Centauri Alliance, even the proud warrior clans of Kaltharl suddenly very interested in friendship with the Deathworlders. What about the Peaceful Traders Union? Deho asked. They've offered to give us exclusive trading rights across their entire commercial network, Yuna replied. No tariffs, no restrictions, full access to their markets. The irony wasn't lost. On any of the humans present, for 5 years they had tried to establish meaningful relationships with other galactic civilizations through diplomacy and cultural exchange. They had offered technology, resources, even military assistance in small conflicts. Most alien species had politely declined, viewing humans as an interesting curiosity but hardly worth serious consideration. Now, after one decisive military action, every major government in the galaxy was suddenly desperate to be humanity's best friend. Lieutenant Kim Tae-ho looked up from his communications console, his young face serious. Sir, we're also receiving an urgent transmission from the Galactic Council. They're requesting an immediate emergency session to discuss ... and I quote, integration of human military doctrine into galactic defense protocols. Deho almost smiled at that. The same council that had spent 3 days debating while an entire species faced extinction now wanted to learn human military tactics. They had finally realized that their centuries-old approach to galactic security endless committees, diplomatic protests, and strongly worded resolutions was utterly inadequate against real threats. Through the command center's reinforced windows, the new reality of the galaxy was clearly visible. Human warships patrolled the Zelani system in formations that looked like schools of mechanical sharks. Their movements were precise, economical, designed for maximum efficiency rather than impressive displays. Every few hours, a ship would vanish into hyperspace, replaced by another from the endless stream of vessels arriving from Earth. The Zelani had been saved, but at a cost none of them had anticipated. They had witnessed the birth of a new galactic superpower, one that approached warfare with the same methodical precision that other species applied to scientific research. Admiral Keeper Voss said quietly, "Your people have done something unprecedented. You've eliminated an entire empire without conquering a single world. The Korthak military infrastructure is gone, but their planets remain intact, their civilians unharmed." How? Deho turned to face the Zelani leader, his expression thoughtful. Because we learned something important from studying your history. Keeper, the Korthok weren't evil because they were naturally violent. They were evil because they chose to use their strength to prey on the weak. We're choosing to use our strength differently. The truth was more complex than Deho let on. Human strategists had spent years analyzing every conflict in recorded galactic history, learning from both the successes and failures of previous civilizations. They had discovered that empires built on conquest inevitably collapsed, but empires built on protection could endure for millennia. Commander Park Sugan entered the command center, her flight suit still smelling of recycled air and hydraulic fluid. "Sir, reconnaissance reports from the outer sectors. We've identified 37 other aggressive species that follow the Korthok model. Small-scale raiders, mostly, but they've been watching our operations," and Deho prompted. 17 of them have already sent surrender messages. They're requesting terms for peaceful coexistence. The others are pulling back to their home systems and fortifying their positions. The psychological impact of the Korthok extermination was spreading across the galaxy faster than the human fleet itself. Predatory species that had operated with impunity for centuries were suddenly reevaluating their life choices. The message was clear. Humanity had declared open season on anyone who preyed upon the innocent. Lieutenant Kim's console chimed with an incoming priority transmission. "Sir, message from Earth Command. They're requesting permission to broadcast on all galactic frequencies." Deho nodded his approval. The time for subtlety had passed. The galaxy needed to understand exactly what had changed and what it meant for the future. The transmission began broadcasting across every communication network in known space, from the most advanced quantum relay stations to the simplest radio telescopes. The message was simple, direct, and delivered in the voice of Admiral Deho himself. "This is Admiral Kong Deho of the Terran Defense Fleet, speaking for the people of Earth and all who stand with us. Today, the galaxy has witnessed the end of the Korthok Empire, but this is not a message of conquest. This is a promise of protection. Earth will defend those who cannot defend themselves. It will stand guard against those who would prey upon the innocent. We will not ask for tribute, we will not demand submission, and we will not tolerate genocide in any form. To the peaceful civilizations of the galaxy, you have our protection. To those who would threaten them, you have our attention. There will be no warnings. There will be no negotiations. There will be no escape. The age of human protection has begun. Choose your actions accordingly." The transmission ended, leaving the galaxy in stunned silence. In the Zilani Command Center, Keeper Voss looked up at Admiral Deho with something approaching reverence. "You've changed everything," the old Zilani whispered. "The galaxy will never be the same." Deho nodded, looking out at the human ships patrolling the star system. "That was always the plan, Keeper. The strong have a responsibility to protect the weak. It's time the galaxy learned that lesson." As the stars wheeled overhead, a new chapter in galactic history began. Humanity had revealed its true nature, not as conquerors, but as guardians. The Deathworlders had become the galaxy's protectors, and the universe would never be the same. The end.